Troy, what's going on? It's great. It's great to see you again.
It's very nice to see you.
So
Glad
before,
we've reconnected.
yes, likewise. And I guess just to kick this one off, maybe if you could just share a little bit about who you are, what we do, and then I want to take you back to how we originally connected because I do think it's a pretty neat story.
Absolutely. Right now, I am located in the greater Boston area. I run a startup called MeMed. It's a diagnostic health technology company where I'm the general manager and vice president and really the founder of the U.S. business. It's an Israeli-based company. A really cool story. In 2020, during COVID, I got a call from a recruiter talking about this new technology on the other side of the world. I didn't know a lot about Israel or this startup culture, and I got exposed to this little company that had been working on this technology for the past 10 years. And they had their sights set on the U.S. and North American market. And so, over a series of conversations, all over Zoom, all the interviews were over Zoom. Me and the CEO really hit it off, and it became so compelling that I felt like I couldn't pass on the opportunity to launch this technology in the U.S. So I came on at the end of 2020 to essentially set up the U.S. business and get the product launched. It's a product, just to tell you really quickly, it's a blood test that will measure the host immune response to tell you what sort of infection you have. And so it listens to you, hence the name MeMed, and will indicate on how the body responds the type of infection. And so that leads to all sorts of great things, most notably helping doctors decide if you need antibiotics or chicken soup. And as simple as that problem seems, even in 21st century medicine, there's no great answers. And so I was thrilled to help bring that to market. Where we are today, we've got a cleared product and a team in the U.S., and we're engaged with a number of hospitals.
That's amazing. When when you first joined, so there was no you built the team in the U.S. There's no team here.
Correct.
What was it like? Like what was it like when you first got started in terms of building the team?
Well, it was one of those, be careful what you wish for. I'd been working my entire career, for larger companies, running commercial, running big teams, established products. And I had hoped that I could build something myself of real consequence. And so when I was thrust into this role, it was a bit scary, to be honest, to start. It was me by myself in the U.S., tasked with building a company with almost 100 people in Israel really counting on me. And so there was quite a bit of pressure, but at the same point, excitement. And so building the team became the primary focus, and thinking through, our go-to-market plan and what we need. One of the most important things, in my opinion, is the people that you surround yourself with, not only in terms of roles and backgrounds, but a certain ethos that I think is required for taking on such a challenge like this. And so my first 6 months was focused on building a team and recruiting. And even 3 years later, I'm still focused on the team and how do we best empower them to help our customers and patients.
That's awesome. And how many people are on the team today in the U.S.?
So right now we have close to 20 people in the U.S. We've got a handful in the Boston area with me, and a number of these that are across the U.S. We've got roles that range from salespeople to medical folks that work for us, both PhDs, and we've got ED clinicians, marketing and service and market access. And so we've got a lot of functions. Many departments have only one or two, which is quite unique and fun. But we stretch across the U.S. To support the market.
Got it. So the company is actually remote here as well as in Israel.
So mostly remote, I would say. Now we do have a U.S. headquarters, which we've set up in Andover, Massachusetts. But we go in. Our local team will go in maybe once a week or a few times a week. And then we'll have our team come in to visit, to come together periodically, maybe a few times a year. But we're primarily remote. We live a lot of our life on Zoom when we're not traveling. Israel is similar. They've got about 80 people that have a big office, and they go in several times a week. So it's a largely remote organization.
Cool. I'm curious, as you were building your company, how do you think about attracting talent and as well as once you have the talent, obviously retaining them?
That's a big meaty topic. In terms of attracting, I think you're looking for a variety of things. For us, we were looking for a skill set that was not just functionally based. For example, I didn't want a salesperson that just did sales and only wanted to implement an existing playbook. I really wanted a person that was great at sales, that understood the market, that had an entrepreneurial spirit and wanted to build, wasn't afraid to fail, iterate, and change things around, and not afraid to break things. And so as we were recruiting, it became much more than just a skill set. We, of course, would look for the best and the brightest, and that was only one component, but taking them through the process and understanding if they really do have the energy and appetite to go build an entirely new market, that was critically important to us. And it was okay. You've got some that love to maybe implement a playbook and stay in their lane. And then you've got others, I think, much like yourself, and I think myself, that want to build something new and discover. And so that became a big part of this. We used our network, we used recruiters, we interviewed as a team, because as we started to hire folks, I almost wanted to create a family environment where everyone felt that they had a responsibility to building the company. It wasn't just me, it was us, and what were we going to do, and how were we going to build the team. And I really think that made a big difference. And so that was a big part of it. And ongoing, we still try to press that. Even this most recently, we had a sales meeting. We spent a lot of time in sessions asking the team to provide input. And it was sort of a running line that I'd always used. It would sound like a joke, but it wasn't. When we were interviewing every single person, it was the common theme was you don't get to voice your opinion. It's a requirement here. You are brought in because we want to hear from you on the issues and how to best build the company.
You use the word like we a lot. How do we build this? And we. I'm curious, how do you actually build that culture where everyone feels like they're part of the team and their voice really does matter?
Yeah, it's hard. I know companies all say they want to do it, or many will provide initiatives around this, but pulling it off is something that's tricky. And I think we do a good job, but there's always times we're trying to improve. But I think it starts with how you hire and the expectations that you set. I'm a big believer in no micromanagement. I love to provide direction, get input on that so that we're aligning on the direction, and then let folks go figure it out. Because I think you're going to get the most out of people. They feel like they really have the room to operate. And so setting that up front is important. And I also think creating this transparency culture of between myself and our employees, but each other creates an accountability. And so folks don't want to let their colleagues down almost more than they don't want to let their bosses down. And I think instilling that and constantly promoting that has been a big thing for us. I'll never forget, we did a management team exercise where we went to this flight simulator, and it was all based on sort of lessons learned from missions and developed, by the U.S. military. And we utilized this to not only have fun and build as a team, but to reinforce this lessons learned, that it is okay to move fast and break things. And then as a group, take a step back and ask the whys. Why did this happen? What did we do to create this? What do we learn from it? And what do we do different? And so creating this psychological safety is something we put a lot of time into. And I think it works in a lot of cases, and also it's fun, and it's fun to empower people.
That's neat. It sounds like that's something that's really important in the culture that you're building in terms of helping the each person feel like they can go and move fast, break things, try things out, and see what works. I'm curious, do you feel like that generates more ideas that might not be on the table when people have that freedom and flexibility to run a direction and see what they can come up as opposed to being micromanaged?
Absolutely. And I'd like to think, although I guess we'd have to ask the employees, but I'd like to think that I try to intentionally create a vulnerability for myself and the fact that I don't know everything and we don't know everything. We've got a plan. It's our best guess, and then we're going to go try it. And the market's going to tell us, and employers are going to tell us. And so I try to really press that I don't know everything. And, in a few specific examples, our head of service is a relatively young guy, but I feel like is supremely talented. And I tell him all the time that he's my subject matter expert. I'm looking for him as a partner to further develop our operations procedures, for example, or to think through our contracting. And just recently, he called to ask me if he could run this initiative. And I said, Jordy, what's the first thing I'm going to ask you? And he said, you're going to ask me what I think and what I think we should do. And again, if you think it's the right thing to do, I trust you. And I think over time, that's really been important. And it's also important for what we're doing in medicine to trust and make it okay for our team to go engage with customers, to ask them, what do they think? And so for our product, we had a pretty narrow focus of where we thought it was useful, but it turns out the market has other ideas for where else it can be useful. And so creating an openness in this communication channel that goes two ways has been an important part for us to evolve from where we were just 3.5 years ago.
Yeah. How do you think that putting that trust and faith in your employees changes how they show up, engage, and engage at work every day?
I think it's hugely important. People generally leave, in my opinion, mostly because of their boss. And probably more specifically, if they feel like they're not empowered or they can't have freedom to operate or they don't feel included in the vision, for me, those are ways that as a quick recipe for people to disengage. And I've been very mindful of that because I've myself fallen victim to this over my career. And so trying to be intentional for creating an environment that does just the opposite and pulls folks in, I think matters. It's in some ways hard to measure, but one thing we pay attention to is we do engagement surveys. They're anonymized to get a general sense of what's working and what's not working, and so that we can do more of the stuff that's working and less of the stuff that's not working, and also solicit feedback. And I think for a startup where things don't always go as planned and we've got talented folks that get a lot of recruitment calls, we're seeing a relatively low rate of turnover, which is great, especially from our core group. We've seen almost no turnover from our core group that started this. And I think part of it is they feel like this is their baby too, and they want to see it pay off through, a variety of ways, however that's defined for you. And so I think it's critically important, especially when things are hard. It's easy to slap fives when things are going great, but the character of your team, individuals in the bond of the team, is really tested through adversity. And we've eaten plenty of dirt so far. I can tell you that firsthand. And that's really where you measure, how you're doing as a team.
Is most of your team, are they outside salespeople who are going to offices?
It's a mix, really. We've got it's sales folks that are doing a lot of things. I mean, that's almost how you typically think of sales folks is you give them a playbook and a binder or sell sheet, however you want to do it, and they go out to offices. But for this, it's so much more. In fact, one change we made that was more symbolic is we hired territory sales managers, and we've recently, from the feedback of the team, is it's so much more. Maybe we should signify that in their title. And so we've changed that from sales managers to regional business managers, which is a small change, but signifies that we understand you're doing far more than just going out and soliciting the product. You're really running this business in your region. But to directly answer your question, we have a handful of those. We have service folks, we have medical clinicians, and those that work in what's called market access, trying to make sure we get payment from insurers. and it's a collaborative effort. It really is like a consultative sales and adoption process now.
Hmm. I'm curious because the team is scattered and people are remote. Some people are going into an office, but it sounds like for the most part, people are really remote. How do you maintain a culture of connection, care, collaboration when everyone isn't engaged on a regular basis in person? And obviously, so many people are asking that question because so many people today are remote, they
Yeah.
are hybrid, but it's certainly not easy.
Well, I won't take a victory lap by any means, but I'll tell you what we're doing, and I think it's having some impact. So I've used this word a few times intentionally. I mean it because we really are thinking about things and how to mitigate some of these problems. And so we've empowered this really two members of my team to think about them they have quarterly goals. And one of those goals is driving engagement from the team. And so some of this is as simple as we did a survey and collected a lot of data. And communication is one thing that came up of how do you stay engaged. And so creating a number of communication channels is something we've put in. Something as simple as a team meeting weekly that's not just business, but is a connection. So we're doing business and we're spending a little time to do non-business activities. We've also done some virtual team meetings with different themes. So we've organized, and it sounds hokey, but every time they love it. We did like a murder mystery virtually where everyone is drinking a beer. And we've done Halloween things, and we've done a lot of events to drive this togetherness. And it's always the employees think they're not sure what to make of it. And when we get together, they all end up loving it. And it's also, I think it's got to be driven employee to employee. So really making sure and instilling in the group that connect with each other. It shouldn't all be driven by what we're organizing, and we're going to do that. And we want to stay in touch, through the meetings and through text and Slack, but also with each other is very important. And so really impressing upon folks the togetherness that can be formed by sharing ideas, together. And then we try to get everyone to do a big meeting, twice a year where we do business, and we really spend a lot of time with team bonding too.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I think it's critically important that people within an organization, the key contributors, the employees, that they take the initiative amongst themselves, to go and build the culture that they want. Because obviously, leadership or management can shape and influence, but ultimately, I think it comes down to the individuals all really buying into it and taking ownership of helping cultivate the culture that they want to be in on a day-to-day basis.
What I think is helpful too is a lot of companies will take surveys and decide on they'll get feedback from their employees on what's important. Putting that into action and making sure that's visible is an important aspect. It's almost, it loses its impact if an organization is telling its employees, and please give us feedback, and then nothing happens. Folks need to see that they're actually listening and making changes that will impact my day-to-day of my job, but also the culture as we know it, and taking that extra step and make sure it's not just a headline initiative that goes nowhere. You've got to get your whole team thinking about and committing to, if we're going to do this, we have to live it daily, and we need to show progress on these. Otherwise, why do it? So I think that's something that can sometimes be lost, and maybe not even intentionally, but it can be lost with all the other competing events. And this one does have to be continually prioritized for the management team and for all employees.
Yeah, I'm sure it's tough. You have so much on your mind in regards to professionally all the things that you have to do to maintain, grow the business, and then you have to obviously deal and manage with, and how to take the feedback and actually implement. So I'm sure that's a challenge for many people to figure out. Hey, we have this feedback now. How do we actually put it to work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One thing that I'd heard, somewhere throughout my career, that it's again hard to quantify, but is almost a cultural thing that I try to be as a leader and encourage other leaders to be, is just be reasonable. Like, life happens, things come up, and be reasonable, be a human being first with all things that are going on. And when you're doing one-on-ones, don't skip them. Take the time to truly understand what's going on in your world, Danny. What are the challenges professionally and personally, in committing to that, generally listening, generally offering feedback and advice, not writing emails and half listening. It's something, again, that's hard to quantify, but I think makes quite a bit of difference, especially when you see that you're not only listening but you're taking action.
Yeah, 100%. Where do you think your approach to leadership comes from? It sounds like you have a very human first way to look at things in terms of how you went about building the team, and now as you think about the future and beyond, being reasonable and putting your people first, however you can as a leader. But I'm curious, where does that come from for you? Because obviously, that's not a standard thing of how all leaders operate by any means of the imagination.
I've had the privilege of having some great bosses, and I'll call it even a privilege to have some that I didn't think were as effective. And I try to use all of these perspectives and mold it in my own style. And so I've got the advantage of some experience in seeing what really works and what doesn't work so well. And it's fun to have the opportunity to influence that. When I talked about at the beginning, this scary proposition, but also is exciting that we can try to put all these best practices into the plan and see how it works. And I always reserve the right to screw up. I tell everyone I think I have it right, but I'm probably going to screw up. And I've got the vulnerability to say, call me out when I do, and let's get it right together. But you learn over time, and you make sure that it's consistently. One thing that stood out for me that I guess it's been a critical part of this is a boss of mine at Thermo Fisher, really dynamic guy, just a true talented guy. I learned a lot from him. And even the simple things of how to run one-on-ones, he would say, Troy, start with the 4 Ps. And the first P is always people. Okay. People, process, performance, partnerships. And it's almost a structure that I think about it is always people first. And if people are disengaged, or they're unhappy, or they're not aligned, or they've got things going on, and you're not acknowledging and trying to be a resource there, the other stuffs fall flat. I mean, they are the true force multiplier. And so that was a valuable lesson that I still try to use is 4 Ps, people first.
I love that. And I was going to ask if there was someone earlier on in your career who influenced you, but it sounds like maybe this person was a big influence.
It was that for that reason. And another thing that I've put into my leadership style is, and I'm sure everyone has a story of this, I bet you even do, but if you've got someone that trusts and believes in you and gives you the autonomy to go figure things out, that goes a long way. And I've had the opportunity early in my career to get jobs that I probably wasn't qualified for. And it taught me so much and made me feel so empowered and drove me to succeed. I think giving people these opportunities is important, and it motivates a lot of folks, especially if you hire the right folks and if this is something that gets them going. We talked about this ethos. Giving them that empowerment is what propelled me to go far beyond where I thought I might have done, when I first graduated college.
Yeah, it's funny. So I want to bring this conversation just full circle. So Troy and I connected. I was Troy's student at Bentley University in a sales class, which was, I think, a bit abnormal at the time, I'd say, because you think of school normally as you go in and the teacher teaches whatever is the agenda or course. They very much like teach it out of the textbook. At least that was how it was for most of my classes in college. And you came in with a partnership with a local water company, and you said we're going to be selling water, and didn't give us much instruction as it relates to. You gave us the parameters of the rules and what we were going to be doing, but you didn't tell us, and you gave us, a guide as regards to how to sell, but you didn't say how we should actually go about selling. And everyone, I think, took ownership of it in their own way. And I remember I kind of just hustled and was like, I'm going to go find people. And there was one guy, I think his name was Jeff, who like partnered with a nonprofit and said to people in his network, you can go and donate water to people in need. And he like crushed everyone. And I remember that so vividly. And as you're talking about your own leadership approach as it relates to not micromanaging, giving people freedom and flexibility and autonomy, it's making me think about how, in a micro way, we got to experience that, and it enabled. I, as someone at the time, just was like, I'm going to hustle my way to success here, and someone
Mm-hmm.
else got so creative, and it always made me think about the power of just giving your people the parameters, but then letting them soar from there. And it sounds like maybe it's something you've continued to apply, and I'm sure refine over the years of your leadership approach.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was fun. I remember you being young, bright-eyed, ambitious, hustled, and always wanted to learn more. And that was a lot of fun. I remember kind of like yesterday. I'm glad you enjoyed that.
Yeah, that was I think probably one of the coolest college experiences, and learn along the process. Well, we can start to wrap this up. I like to end these with a power round of just quick questions, of like your number one tip. So we'll fly through them, and then we'll wrap it up. How's that sound?
Sure.
Okay, cool.
Sounds good.
So number one tip for being a good manager.
Listen first.
Number one tip for hiring well.
Um, I look for grit over everything.
Number one tip for firing well.
Transparency and be human.
Number one tip to retain your best talent.
Don't wait until there's a problem. Be proactive.
Cool. Awesome. Anything else that we didn't discuss that you want to leave on the show today?
Well, I just want to say I think this is something really important that you've honed in on, and I think you're gonna strike a nerve with a lot of folks in leadership throughout the organization, and just bringing an awareness and empowerment to this. I think is critically important, especially now the world has changed, the way we work is changing. And I think this is critically important, and so I'll congratulate you for driving this, and I think you're gonna get a lot of captive audiences that want to learn more and instill this in their organization. So kudos to you, and I wish you luck as you
Appreciate
chase this
that.
down.
Where can people get a hold of you if they want to connect?
So I'm on LinkedIn's probably the best place. So at Troy Boutelle at LinkedIn. If you'd like to learn more about MeMed, we've got me-med.com. Those are probably the two best places.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the time, Troy. Appreciate it.
I appreciate it as well. Take care.